Many of us exclaimed, "What an order! I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic, the chapter to the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear three pertinent ideas. A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could have relieved us.
Yeah, that was a pretty good chorus there, Sherry. All right. We're going to start today on page 130, but I'd like to backtrack just a little bit. We're in the family afterward. Let's bring ourselves up current here with this chapter. We have some visiting friends with us. This is a chapter that if there's no family around and so forth, it easily gets ignored, kind of set aside, not nearly as important as the 4th chapter and the 5th chapter and the 6th chapter, 7th chapter. Well, that's not true at all. This chapter is extraordinarily important, and it contains material you can't find anywhere else in the big book. Same way with chapter 8. Remember, we found when we studied chapter 8, the chapter of the wives, we found the only discussion of the progression of the disease of alcoholism is right there in chapter 8, and also a major factor in recovery, and in the recovery of others around us, that these 12 steps work for everybody. We saw the genesis of the development of the Al-Anon family groups right there in chapter 8. Chapter 9 reflects the realities of those who wrote this book. Remember that this book is not philosophy, it is not surmise, it is not opinion, it's not something written to attain a PhD. This is history. This book is history. It tells us what happened. This is the way these folks recovered. And they're telling us exactly what they did to recover, and they're saying to us, if you do what we did, we truly believe you will recover also. Of course, they were right when they said that. This chapter, chapter 9, deals with the experience they had with family units, because remember, as not like today, where we run around all exclusive and freezing families out, families were welcomed when this fellowship got started. It was based upon the family. They met in the family homes, and the families were part of the recovery of the alcoholic, and they recognized as they went along that the families had been very seriously damaged by the alcoholics, and that family members needed recovery just as much as the alcoholic did. And that the surest way for the family to stay together and to grow and prosper together, which would be a tremendous boost to the recovery of the alcoholic as well, was for the family to grow together spiritually. And also because they realized that there was very little real knowledge out there about what's wrong with us, they felt it was necessary to go to great pains to explain to people close to us and who have to continue to deal with us after sobriety exactly what's wrong with us and how this all came about, and how we were likely to be as we go through a process of recovery. So this chapter deals with the alcoholic in recovery. And it's incredibly important to understand that the recovery from this disease is not a straight line matter. It's not something that you take a specific medicine for or have a specific operation and you go through a period of rehabilitation or strengthening or whatever, as you would with an ordinary disease, and then it's over with. It's gone. Forget about it. It's all over with. It was bad for a time, but now it's gone. Alcoholism is a disease which is never cured. Never. There's no cure for it. It's incurable. What we have is a lifetime of remission from the symptoms of the disease. And we get to have that. And if you weren't paying real close attention, you'd never know we were alcoholics to begin with. Because we get to be just like normal people. But we have to be constantly on guard. We have to, and the people who are close to us need to know that we're dealing with a disease which hangs over our heads like a sword of Damocles. It's like being Marie Antoinette stuck in the guillotine for the rest of your life. Anybody who pulls that rope and your head's gone. Kind of a nasty way to look at it, isn't it?
Happy, joyous, and free.
Let them eat cake anyway, right? And so one of the most important things that this chapter does for the family is to teach them about us and what recovery must be for us. But it also emphasizes for us as we read it exactly what's going on here and what we need to do. I want to give you a good example of that. We find it at the bottom of page 128 and the top of page 129. A little background on this paragraph. The preceding paragraph details what we are like when we get all spiritual. We get ourselves all pumped up to be the next coming. And we get real guru-ish, and we're likely to run around in saffron robes and bang on gongs and carry incense canisters and tell people, you look like you're an alcoholic, get on your knees and start praying, this kind of stuff, you know. And so the family doesn't much like that, which you can well imagine. They may be jealous, it says, of a God who has stolen Dad's affections. And then they say, well, if Dad is so spiritual, why doesn't he take care of us? Why doesn't he meet his responsibilities with the family? And why does he always tell us when we ask him for something, don't worry about it, God will take care of it, you know? They expect their father's a bit balmy. Now it goes on to say he's not so unbalanced as they might think. Many of us have experienced Dad's elation. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication. Like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn in over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. Joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. Now here comes the rule, and this is a compound sentence. There are about four very profound thoughts here. So we got to parse this sentence and we have to look at it carefully to see what it's really telling us. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched a limitless load. Now if we simply substitute spirituality or store of spirituality for limitless load, we'll see what this means. That he has barely scratched a limitless source of spiritual growth and spiritual comfort, which will pay dividends only if he minds it. There's not a thing in the world we are going to gain by sitting there looking at it. Or, in the alternative, surfing the net, or surfing the idiot box, or wishing, or hoping, or going to meetings and saying, oh, poor me, and having everybody say, good doggy, and then and nothing else happens, right? We have to work at this stuff, and the family has to understand that. Will pay dividends only if he minds it. Minds it means working it, doesn't it? Going after it, digging this stuff out. Minds it for when? For the rest of his life. Now, Hey, family, the rest of my life. You hear what it's saying here? Get used to it, kids. This is me. This is my life. There are things I must do. That is, if I plan to stay sober, if I plan to be the father or the husband that you've always known you wanted. Every day, I must carry a vision of God's will for me into everything I do. I must practice the principles of the program in all my affairs. This means that every day I'm going to get to a meeting. Every day I'm going to find time to pray. Every day I'm going to find time to meditate. Every day I'm going to find time to take my inventory and see what's going on with me today, because I need to stay current. I need to know what my present reality is so that I can deal with it. And every day I'm going to find somebody that I can help. And I'm going to do these 5 things every day for the rest of my life. And that's what I must do. The product of all of this is spiritual growth for me. And I'm hoping that you, all of you, will join with me. Because remember the admonition here back in chapter 7, that we must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress, each of us. So this chapter is a major appeal to the family to say, come on, join with Dad, join with Mom. We will walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress together. And everybody profits from that in the most amazing way, because the 12 steps are for everybody. They're not just for us. We don't own them. Let's go on. Only if he minds it for the rest of his life, and here's the cruncher, and insists on giving away the entire product. Now, why in the world would you do that? Everything we've ever been taught teaches us the opposite. Whatever you accumulate is yours. You keep it, you amass it, you hoard it. If you want to be happy and you want to be safe and secure, you've got to get out there and get an education, get a career, make lots of money, accumulate lots of things to prove how successful you are and give you comfort and security. And learn how to manipulate and control people, because you must be able to do that so that they won't get you first. And that was a lie. It was a damnable lie. That didn't bring us any happiness or security, just the opposite. The more we accumulated, the more we became afraid of losing what we had. The more we accumulated, the more we became afraid of not getting what we wanted. We became afraid of success and failure and rejection, and we became afraid of monetary loss. We became afraid of being found out for the things we did to get what we've got. We became afraid of being punished. We became afraid of getting old, fat, and ugly. I never had that problem. Old, yes. Fat and ugly, no. But you see, what happened is these fears took our natural God-given instincts and warped and perverted them so that they no longer worked for us. They turned against us. They were the devil himself. And they wiped us out. And out of those warped natural instincts came all of our defects of character, which blocked us off from God. And from there we know exactly what the genesis was, which brought us to a place of spiritual bankruptcy, which is what we came in the door with. Now then, what's this business of giving away the entire product? Let me tell you a story. This is real. When I came in 1964, I was very, very blessed because the first meeting I went to was at the Ohio Street group in West Los Angeles. The Ohio Street group at that time was consisted of some of the most powerful AA figures who ever lived. And others joined that group. For example, Chuck Chamberlain joined that group. Chuck Chamberlain, Richard Chamberlain's brother. Chuck came into that meeting wearing his wardrobe. I'm telling you, he was a down and outer. Not a dime in his pocket. And too proud to ask Richard for anything. And he sat around there and he got the same sponsors I had, and these two guys were great. You know, I think I've told you about them before. They were great. One of them was there when this thing got started in the 30s, and the other was sponsored by Bill, so they knew what they were doing. And they got hold of Chuck, and they taught him. And he believed it. And he took everything they taught him to heart, and he said, this is true, this is true. And one of the things they taught him was that if you want to keep something, you got to be willing to give it away. If you're my significant other, my lover, my paramour, if I'm not willing that you should go, if you decide that you want to go and I let you go with love, I'm not going to keep you. As long as you know you can go anytime you want with love, you don't have any claw marks in your back, you're going to stick around. If I want to keep something, I have to be willing to let it go. It's a paradox. And so Chuck came up with this idea. He said, I'm going to go into business. And we all laughed a little bit because he was kind of bummy looking in those days. He was a smart guy. He had a good education. So I'm going to go in business, and everything I make I'm going to give away. You know, oh, yeah, sure, Chuck, yeah, all right. Well, we figured this guy really, you know, he's taking this stuff pretty seriously here, so. But he meant it. Chuck went into business, and everything he made, he started giving away. He wasn't foolish about it. He wasn't just scattering money down on the sidewalk or anything, but he was picking his spots. And his business prospered, and he continued to give away what he made. But pretty soon, he was making more than he could give away. Well, within a few years, this guy was a multimillionaire. And he's still giving away just as fast as he could. And I don't know if any of you have read a little book called New Pair of Glasses. You can find that in some of the better AA bookstores. It's a collection of 6 lectures or talks that Chuck Chamberlain gave. Chuck C., New Pair of Glasses, and he talks about his way of approaching this spiritual problem, giving away what you have. Now, what he found out, and what we all need to understand, is that the only way, truthfully now, this is the truth, the only way a human being ever really finds happiness, the only way, is to give away the happiness we've been given. Every time we madly search for happiness and fun and relaxation and recreation and all this stuff on cruise boats or whatever, we're looking in the wrong place. And we get to find this out. Look at what the big book tells us. And we're going to see that here in this chapter. That it is God's will for us that we be happy, joyous, and free. Probably for the first time in our lives, to have happiness, joyousness, and freedom. That's our heritage. We get to have that. But it ain't free, guys. Got to work for it. If we're willing to do the work, we get to inherit happiness, joyousness, and freedom. And the greatest joy that any of us will ever know in our entire lifetimes is to see the light come back into the eyes of a downtrodden, beat up, on his or her way out the door alcoholic who is suddenly snatched back from the hell of alcoholism and begins to recover. And when we see that, we know why the hell we're here, what we're doing here, what's our purpose in life, and what does happiness really mean. It comes from service. It comes from giving back what we've been given. And I don't know of any other way. And boy, is that ever clear in our relationships with each other. The more that we're willing to give to each other in love and understanding and tolerance, the happier we are. If you want to see unhappy people around a room, just look for the grouches, look for the gossips, look for the liars, look for those who put people down all the time. Look for those who are living a hypocritical life, who do not do in their lives what they tell everybody else they must do. You don't want to walk in their shoes, my friends. Look for the person who's walking around here with untreated alcoholism and go up to them and say, how are you feeling? Because many times they're going to say, I look pretty good on the outside, but I feel terrible. I know that I'm not doing right, but I don't know what to do about it. There's a person that needs help, and we can help them. We don't have to wait around for people to come taking numbers and asking us for help. We need to talk. We need to ask. We need to be caring. We need to want to know, how you doing today? In my office, most of us are in recovery. And one of the things that happens the minute that one of us gets together with another, we say, what can I do for you today? What do you need? I love you? Boy, does that ever work. All right. Now then, let's go over to page 130. We got a little lead in here, bottom of page 129. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility toward the family, it's well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. Doesn't that kind of strike home to you as contrary to what we hear around here all the time? What's it say? During those first days of convalescence. What the heck have we been talking about all this year and a half? You get sober and you got a message that's ready for the next person in line right now, today, tomorrow, the next day. What is this business? You can't do anything until you've been sober at least 90 days. Sit down, shut up, and listen. Take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. You ain't got nothing that we want to hear. Balderdash. By the way, I should tell you that a friend of mine has now put together a game he calls Balderdash Bingo. It consists of 25 squares with things like halt, or you're only as sick as your secrets, or you're entitled to your feelings, and all this stuff. 25 of these, okay? Now you get to have a game card in front of you when you go to a meeting. And you have markers, and you put a marker in each one of those things when it comes up, right? As soon as you get 5 in a row across or down or diagonally, you leap up and say, Balderdash! Balderdash Bingo. Oh boy, we have some fun. If we don't take ourselves so damn seriously, everything gets done a lot better. This is serious stuff. But you and we got to have a sense of humor because, I was talking to somebody last night. We have a little meeting on Saturday nights, which is really a dynamite little meeting. It's a language of the heart meeting. It's at 9:15. Everybody's a little bit pooped and all that, but we all kind of kick back and everybody just lets go. So one of the guys was sharing, maybe he's here today. I don't want to be careful here. Sharing about this. Oh no, it wasn't him. It was another guy. Senior moments. Don't laugh. Okay. You're talking about how jammed up he gets when he wants to practice his perfectionism. Well, wow, that's a tough one because the big book says that we don't claim any kind of perfection, do we? We certainly would like to work toward it. But you know what perfectionism really is our brain lying to us. There he is. Wasn't this you brought this up?
No, it was last night.
But it wasn't you, okay. You were hiding back there.
It was last night. So
But you remember that, yeah, okay. So I hope I do this honestly now without embellishment. So I told him, you know what that is it's just part of your sneaky brain lying to you, telling you got to be perfect. And perfectionism, demanding of ourselves that we be perfect, is just a way of setting ourselves up for failure. And it's very, very dangerous for us. That does not mean, of course, that we're going to accept sloppiness or inattention or a failure to do those things that we must do. But it isn't a question of what we do so much as how we do it. And there are a lot of things that we need to do that we're not going to do perfectly, but we're going to do them anyway. In fact, the big book is very kind to us in this, remember, because it gives us this wonderful sense of that all this is doable by human beings. We don't have to be paragons in any sense. It tells us all the way back there in the fourth step that so long as we do as we think God would have us, as we think God would have us do, and humbly rely upon Him, that He will enable us to match calamity with serenity. In other words, it isn't a valid excuse to say, I don't know what God's will is for me, so I'm just going to sit here and wait till He tells me. Dr. Paul put it very succinctly. He said, I never just sit around and wait for God to tell me what to do. He said, rather I do what's in front of me to be done. And I leave the results up to Him. And however that turns out, that's God's will for me. It's a pretty neat way of looking at it, isn't it? The truth of the matter is that all we really have to do is whatever there is to be done today, what's on my plate today, get it done. Whatever the next right thing turns out to be, as the best of my ability to discern the right thing, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to do anything to harm another person if I can help it. But most importantly, I'm going to let God have the results. I'm not going to try to dictate how all this should come out. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do and let God have the results. That's the way it really works. And when we do that, we get marvelous results. My gosh, stuff way beyond anything we could ever plan. This is called letting go, isn't it? This is called surrender. This is the epitome of our third step prayer. God, take my life and my will into your hands and do with me and build with me as you will. I mean, this is called, without reservation, letting go, surrendering. It's what the big book talks about in the first paragraph of chapter 5, that those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. And so we're going to stay away from the whole idea of perfectionism. Let's take a look here at the bottom of page 120. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility, it's well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. During those first days of convalescence, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. Remember, when Bill came out of the hospital, he immediately began to find other people to help. And so what this is talking about is the way it was done, not the way it is so often done today, which is really quite disgusting, because it's putting people's lives in jeopardy that need not be. Some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable. We think Dad will be a firmer foundation than a man who is placing business or professional success ahead of spiritual development. In other words, there are two extremes here. Just one second. Let me talk about the extremes, okay? On the one extreme is the spiritual elitist. The other extreme is the person who is going to spend the majority of their time and effort and thoughts in rebuilding business, making money, reestablishing reputation. Over here, ignoring the family for spiritual pursuits and chasing down every possible lead on somebody who might need help. And over here, the person who is spending all their time on their trade or profession, their business, trying to reestablish themselves. Now, in between, there's some place in between here where they really belong. Now let's think what that is. It's a matter of commitment, isn't it? It's a matter of integrity, isn't it? If I've made commitments that I'm going to do certain things, I need to live up to those commitments. It does not mean that I'm going to ignore other aspects of my life or my recovery. But if I have a family, and I have children, and if I have a business and I have partners, if I have an AA group and I've made commitments there, I must live up to those commitments. And when I do that, I find that I'm naturally spreading my time and energy around in a way which is going to be most productive. Because our commitments, if we live up to them, will lead us where we ought to be. The person who is placing business or profession ahead of spiritual development is much more likely to drink again, is telling us, than the person who is hepped on some kind of spiritual pursuits. Anything is preferable to that. Now then, we're coming to a wonderful, wonderful paragraph which we are going to get to as soon as we get the rent paid and take our 10-minute break. Please pay the rent, take 10 minutes, be back in your seats in 10 minutes, if you will, please. The first full paragraph on page 130. This is a beautiful paragraph, and it's one that you can easily mark in your book for meditation. Those of us who have spent much time in the world of spiritual make-believe have eventually seen the childishness of it. This dream world has been replaced by a great sense of purpose, accompanied by a growing consciousness of the power of God in our lives. Remember that we learned back when we got through at the 10th step that we, by that time, had become God conscious. We're conscious of the God within. We are spirit, God is spirit, He is of us and we are of Him. We come to see that, to feel it. Every once in a while we get to have a God buzz, just never know for sure when that's going to happen. The consciousness of the power of God in our lives. Now in chapter 4 it told us that this is where we were going to find God. We would find God deep down within us. we have come to believe He would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. That's a wonderful, wonderful thought, isn't it? That God would like us to keep our heads in the clouds with Him, but that our feet ought to be firmly planted on earth. Now let's consider this just for a second. Remember when we used the third step prayer, we asked God to relieve us of the bondage of self. We asked Him in effect to cut the ropes and chains and cables that bound our spirit into a spiritual fetal position, to let our spirit soar with the angels. And that's what it's telling us here. That's where God wants us. But our feet firmly planted on earth, because that is where our fellow travelers are. And that is where our work must be done. And so, these are the realities for us. We get to be in a high degree of spiritual contact with God, but at the same time, we must remember what our job is. And we have a job here. We have a purpose, a mission, which is to carry God's word to others, to be of maximum service to Him and our fellows. That's our purpose. These are the realities for us. We have found nothing incompatible between a powerful spiritual experience and a life of sane and happy usefulness. As a matter of fact, those two things are coexistent. They go together. Powerful spiritual experience, a life of sane and happy usefulness. They are twinsies. They are part and parcel of each other. You want a life of sane and happy usefulness, find a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening through the working of the 12 steps. That's the message here. And now we come down to a paragraph which really is a major part of the guts of this whole. Yes, David?
Can I just go back for a minute to that spiritual make-believe?
Yes.
Comment on that? I mean, is that just an impractical spirituality? Is that just being totally spiritual and not practical, or a fraudulent spirituality? What is that? What is he saying there? Spiritual make-believe. What do you make of that expression?
Well, it is probably an over exuberant or an inflated version of our own importance in the scheme of things. Because usually these kinds of things deal specifically with selfishness, self-centeredness, and ego. And so spiritual make-believe would have us out here carrying God's message as an apostle, or somebody who has been anointed, somebody who is always right. Spiritual make-believe denies the existence of the responsibilities and commitments we have on earth, excuses anything that we may shortchange on earth by saying, well, but you have to do God's will first. And actually I can convince myself somewhere along the line that no matter what the outcome may be for people I've shortchanged in life, it's God's will that happened to them. Or it's their problem because they didn't get on a spiritual plane with me, or they don't believe the same as I believe. Bill gave us a good example of that, in his early sobriety. Going into a bar. Saw a guy up at the bar, like this. You know how we get. Going up to this guy and saying, "You're a drunk, and I'm going to get you sober." "Oh, yeah, how's that?" "Well, I'll show you. Get on your knees, sucker, and start praying." Didn't work. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration. Nevertheless, that's an illustration of what that means, that we are overwhelmingly devoted to our spiritual essence and how great we are and how chosen we are and all this stuff, and we are right and you are wrong, and spiritual make-believe. I think that's the essence of it, David.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now this next paragraph then goes right to the heart of this whole chapter. One more suggestion. Whether the family has spiritual convictions or not, they may do well to examine the principles by which the alcoholic member is trying to live. They can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, though the head of the house still fails somewhat in practicing them. Can you imagine somebody these days writing head of the house and getting away with it? Oh man, is that ever un-PC?
Head of the house.
Head of the house still fails someone in practicing. Nothing will help the man who is off on a spiritual tangent so much as the wife who adopts a sane spiritual program, making a better practical use of it. Which is kind of interesting because Bill is assuming here that she will make a better practical use of it. Probably right. But look at what's being said here, and let's think, what does he mean here? He can hardly fail to approve these simple principles, spiritual convictions. It's real important that we understand this term, because there's so much misunderstanding today about it. The spiritual principles that he's talking about are the 12 steps. Nothing more. Just the steps. These are the great spiritual principles which have been around forever. You go into any religious or ecclesiastical or even philosophical writings, you're going to find these same principles enunciated in one way or another. But only in the 12 steps are they stated as steps of action. What you do to be in your life what the principle requires, what you do. How do you do this stuff? It's not enough for us to be told we must be honest. We agree, we must be honest. But how can we be honest when we are overwhelmingly devoured by fear, and the fear tells us to be afraid of the results of being honest? And so we can't be. We have this dishonesty is really something over which we have no power. But God does, and as soon as we recognize our powerlessness with respect to the dishonesty, we recognize that it's because we're powerless over our fears. And once we have learned to conquer fear through God's help and His intervention and our own efforts, then we find that we can very easily become honest. And so when we start talking about spiritual principles, we're really talking about the steps. And this book is saying to the family, now it's a good idea for you to work the steps. Go back to page 116, please. This is not the first time we've seen this message, is it? Second paragraph on 116. We've elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, He can solve your problems too. We wives found that, like everybody else, the whole world, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person. And we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. And here's the key. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too. And they did. And they did. And out of that came the Al-Anon family groups. If you were to become a member of Al-Anon, what you would be doing if you were in a group that actually practiced Al-Anon, you would find that the basic Al-Anon program is 12 steps. Because the 12 steps are for everybody. They're not just for alcoholics or addicts. or nail biters, or lint pickers, or nose pickers, or sex addicts, or cocaine addicts, fatties, thinnies, whatever. Everybody's adopted them. Everybody knows that whatever it is that's wrong with you, the 12 steps is a remedy, because what's wrong with us, that is, if it's something's wrong with our heads, steps take care of it. Even the stuff that's wrong with our bodies, usually God takes care of that too. Okay. Going on page 130, there will be other profound changes in the household. Liquor incapacitated father for so many years that mother became head of the house. She met these responsibilities gallantly. Wow. By force of circumstances, she was often obliged to treat father as a sick or wayward child. Even when he wanted to assert himself, he could not, for his drinking placed him constantly in the wrong. Mother made all the plans and gave the directions. When sober, father usually obeyed. Can you imagine? Oh, what a way to live, huh? Thus mother, through no fault of her own, became accustomed to wearing the family trousers. Father, coming suddenly to life again, often begins to assert himself. He's telling her, get out of those pants. Or something like that. This means trouble. Unless the family watches for these tendencies in each other and comes to a friendly agreement about them. Okay, dear, you can wear the pants on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and oh, man. Yes, dear.
I get a lot of humor out of this paragraph.
Which one?
The family with the trousers. In my case, it's my husband's wearing the trousers, but he's also wearing the apron. And
Well, that's your fault, isn't it?
yeah.
No, I thought so, yeah.
And
Honey, do.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
and since I've been in recovery, it's really come to my attention that I have to do a bad face and take care of the family. And it's really interesting because I just wrote out a program of my daily routine of what I'm doing. And before I start getting involved in PTA, child classroom responsibilities, whatever, I realize that I have so much to do with my family that I don't have time for all these other activities. And today,
You mean you can't be a soccer mom anymore?
No, I can't.
Oh, my God. How's your SUV running these days?
It's okay, thank
Yeah.
God. It's still going. But, so, it's just so funny because this is so important to me,
Oh, yeah.
this responsibility. Thank you.
Good. Well, and here's the funny thing about it. If you were to look now at everything you're doing and just go back in time about 6 months, and somebody put this whole menu in front of you and said, this is what you're going to be doing, Stace, you say, you're nuts.
Yeah.
You're crazy.
Well,
No way I can do that.
that's right.
But you see, the truth is, God doesn't give you stuff that you can't handle. You just learn to be more efficient. I was telling somebody that today. They asked me to help them with the steps. I said, fine. But we're not having breakfast every Saturday morning at 7 o'clock. And you better not try to call me every day or I'll get rid of you, because I ain't got time to talk to you every day unless you're in trouble. And I'll tell you what to do. You do it. Check with me once in a while. Make sure you do it, and then we'll be just fine. Because you got to get efficient. I sponsor people long distance by telephone. The only time I ever see them is when they fly here for a fifth step. I don't even know them when they get out the airplane. This is what happens. Your rep gets out there and tell me, old guru, what is the meaning of life?
Close to sea level, Jim. You get
Yeah, right. Oh, man. Yeah, life is fun. Did we answer all questions now? All right. Let's go down here on page 131. Drinking isolates more homes from the outside world. Father may have laid aside for years all normal activities, clubs, civic duty, sports. When he renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. Family may feel they hold a mortgage on Dad so big that no equity should be left for outsiders. That's a pretty interesting way to put it. Instead of developing new channels of activity for themselves, mother and children demand that he stay home and make up the deficiency. Well, that's obviously isn't going to work too well. At the very beginning, the couple ought to frankly face the fact that each will have to yield here and there if the family is going to play an effective part in the new life. Father will necessarily spend much time with other alcoholics, but this activity should be balanced. And the only way that we balance our activities is not by taking charge of our life. You hear people say, I'm going to balance my life. I give them 6 weeks before they drink again. What that really means is I'm going to take over again. I'm abrogating everything I said in the third step prayer. But we balance our lives by meeting our responsibilities and living up to our commitments. Yes?
Glad to be able to be here. I'm really glad that you're on this topic. I have to substitute father and put in mother and father. And my dynamic is the child with the parents instead of the husband with the wife. And just this part that you're just talking about, when he renews interest or she renews interest in such things, a feeling of jealousy may arise. I've been struggling a lot with my family lately. I finally got my license back and a car, and so I've had more freedom to get more involved in AA.
Good.
And it's been really good for me.
Sure.
And my parents, unfortunately, are not like it's being described in the previous pages. They don't want to have this spiritual program. You know, my mom is a very religious person, but doesn't know the first understanding of the steps. And I've had a lot of struggles with them lately where I feel like they feel like jealous, probably because they don't, I really think like they want to control a lot of things in my life. And as I've been getting better, they're losing their control. And one thing that they can't control is my program, because they don't even understand my program.
Sure.
So I get a lot of resistance when I'm going to meetings. If I call and say, I want to stay for another one, you know, I think that there's a jealousy there. Like, well, you're going to this program, and in our mind, we're not seeing changes in you, and you're shirking your responsibility to the family, and you need to be home more to be doing this, that, and the other thing.
Sure.
And I'm having a hard time balancing it because, you know, I'm grateful for the opportunity to still be under their home, and, you know, for them to be willing to give me a chance to get back on my feet. But there's also a price with that. And, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm being blackmailed. You know, I have to make a choice, and every time I choose the program, then they let me know they're upset with me. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just laughing because I can relate to this, because I don't know, you know, and I've tried to include them and say, like, you know, do you want to try to go to Al-Anon with me? Maybe we can go together. And, you know, and they would rather, they feel more comfortable sitting in a place of judgment and ignorance than trying to understand what I'm doing. And it gets really frustrating to me. You know, I know when I'm on the phone with people in the support group, my parents' biggest concern is, well, are you talking bad about us and those AA friends? And it's really difficult, because I want us to have a balance. I want them to support what I'm doing, and all they really care about is the end result that I don't pick up. And they don't really want to be too concerned about the process in order for me to accomplish that.
Who's the problem here?
Me.
Of course.
Me. Yay!
So now then, if you're the problem, what do you need to do to change yourself to alleviate some of the problem? That's a good one to think about. Let me suggest something to you. If you will, when you get home, if you'll sit down with pen and paper and write all this stuff out, just what you've talked about, and ask God for help with it, and ask Him to show you what you ought to be doing, you're going to find that the answers will come. And what you're going to find is that you're going to find ways to relieve the fear that they have, that they're going to lose you, that you're going to go away from them, that you won't be the daughter that they want you to be. And not to say that that fear is rational or reasonable. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. But you got a long history with them. There's an awful lot going on there. Your job is to change, and your job is to recognize what's going on with them and to help them to deal with it. And you write about this, you'll see what you need to do. And this is not a matter of scolding you, it's just a matter of the truth. I mean, this is the reality we all have to face. We're responsible for what happens in our lives. And you have to look to see where you're being judgmental, where you're not being, where you're being refusing to look at their side and to be empathetic for their feelings, because you feel trapped and you feel in fear. So you need to, if you deal with all this stuff, you'll find. Let me give you the simplest possible clue to how to deal with this. Whatever is said, you say, okay. Okay. No arguments.
I'm kidding.
Well, that's just tough. Because we're looking now at what you need to do, at least to alleviate this situation. But most important, when you go home this afternoon, can you remember SLICK? S-L-C-K? You be soft-spoken, loving, considerate, and kind in everything that you do. And the moment you start doing that, your whole milieu will change, your environment will change. Soft-spoken, loving, considerate, and kind. Just be slick.
What's the I for it?
You can make up your own.
Intelligent.
I didn't come up with one, so you get to do your own. Soft-spoken, loving, considerate, and kind. Just be slick, guys. And when somebody says something that you're not particularly happy with, you say, or, okay. Or, gee, that's pretty interesting. The main thing we all have to keep in mind, guys, is that the big book is right. We learned this. We've got to make sure we understand it, that our problems of our own making. Go over on page 133 just for a second. We haven't gotten there yet, and we will next week. 133. Go down 5 lines from the top of that page. But it is clear we made our own misery. God didn't do it. And if you think back to page 62, our problems are of our own making. They arise out of ourselves. The alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot. And this is the truth that we must learn to live with, because it's contrary to everything that the human solutionists tell us. They're always trying to tell us that no wonder you poor thing, no wonder you drank like that, no wonder you did all those things. Look what they did to you. Look what a rotten mother you had. Look what a rotten father you had. Look at the dysfunctional family you had. On and on and on and on. Excuse after excuse after excuse. And nobody wants to make us look at ourselves and say, whoa, my troubles are of my own making. Yes, Lisa?
I just wanted to let you know the effect you're having on me. I wanted to change my I from intelligent to integrity.
To what?
From intelligent to integrity.
Integrity, okay. Soft-spoken, loving, integrative.
Integrative.
What's the?
Because it's much, you're teaching me it's much more important to be honest with myself than to be right.
Okay, all right. Yes, my dear.
Whoa, boy, I had a light bulb.
My name's Tammy, I'm an alcoholic.
Tammy?
And, first of all, I wanna say, I really feel like I'm in the bondage of self right now. And, I've been sober for almost 3 years, which I know is not like a drastically long amount of time. But,
It's a bloody miracle, honey.
I know it really is. But since my divorce, I just feel like, I don't know, I just feel like I've kind of flipped my lid a little bit or something, when we first, separated and everything. Is it okay for me to talk about this?
Of course. We're friends here.
I just was like, I really, I was like in constant contact with my sponsor. I felt like I was really leaning on God, and everything was all right. And I just knew in my heart that everything was all right, and everything has been all right, I had a lot of financial worries, and, I just was afraid of being alone, blah, 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 but then, like, it just seems like I keep making mistakes, I keep doing stuff that I regret, and hurts, that hurts me, and I want to stop doing that, and I feel like, I was thinking about doing another 4th and 5th step, because there's some stuff that I feel like I need to look at and work through again, and I feel like, in a way, I think, why should I feel like I need to be doing a 4th and 5th step after I've already done it, And I think I fairly well do like a 10th step inventory, but there's just some stuff that's bugging me, I guess that's it.
Well, 10-step you do during the day, right?
Just all the time, constantly kind of, look at
Well,
myself.
the 11-step inventory is the one you do at night, and that's the one that gets into a lot more depth, because 10-step is just what's going on with you today. If you're doing your 11-step inventory properly, answering all the questions on page 86, there shouldn't be any mysteries left as to what's going on with you. In other words, that's designed for you to always be aware of your present reality. That's why we do it. And if you're screwing up, it'll show you that you're screwing up. It'll probably show you before you do it.
Right, I already know I'm screwing up.
Okay, so if you get it out of your head and down on paper and you ask God for help with it, that's the way we all have to do that, because, we have human foibles, unfortunately. And still ego crops up, and still pride crops up, and we get scared once in a while. We're just likely to make decisions based on self at any time. That's why we have to take that inventory every day and make sure that we're staying current with what's going on. And what the 11-step inventory does is it keeps you aware if you've gotten off the path. And when you see that you're getting off the path, then you do something to correct it. And when you did your 4th and 5th step, I promise you found out what didn't work, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, so that's why they're there, among other things. You found out what didn't work, so now you stop doing what didn't work and you start doing what will work. But every once in a while you're going to stray from the path, but your inventory will pull you right back on it if you're doing it. And unfortunately, most people talk about it but don't ever do it. Page 86 gives you 10 questions. Answer them every night. And answer them in writing. Get it down on the paper, and anything will ever get ahead of you that way. If you do that, you'll find that whatever has slipped through the cracks up to now will come flooding out for you. Keep a journal every day. Take the time. Answer the questions, and you'll see what's going on. So it works perfectly. Yeah.
My name is Lewis, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Lewis.
Let's say in my situation, let's say you're married and the person who you were married to continues to perhaps be abstinent. Maybe they put down the drink and drinking is the issue. But you're still kind of locked into the old dynamics of, this is where I get confused between, getting sober and becoming this spiritual paragon, this totally enlightened being, Jesus on earth.
What's the confusion?
Well, the confusion is these other person that I'm involved with practices splitting hairs and the old behaviors of knocking down my self-worth and criticism and just being a whirling dervish in my life.
Why do you allow that?
It's not a question about I am powerless over these people.
What people?
The other party.
Okay, it's this one person.
Yeah.
And you married to this person?
No, I'm not married to this person.
And you live with this person?
Yes.
And you want to keep living with this person, so you're willing to put up with all this?
No, I'm saying, when do you say, okay, I'm practicing a spiritual program of being patience, tolerance, and loving,
Sure.
and living in the hope that this person's going to get these certain awarenesses and stop practicing these unspiritual principles
Right, yeah.
with you and those about them. I mean, when do you abandon hope and turn your back and say, hey, I'm evicting this, I'm whacking it, I'm moving on?
Yeah?
Where is the defining point?
I don't know. I guess you reach a point where you're not willing to take it anymore. I guess what we have to do is we have to figure out that
Am I supposed to be patient?
Well,
tolerant,
let me give you a clue that probably
they say,
help.
well, you're dysfunctional and it's your problem. They keep playing that blame game.
Yeah, I know. Well,
And I got that little inkling. Well, I know I'm not perfect, and I know I have these dysfunctions, and I know this, I know that. But when I go around these people, I get that knot in my stomach, and I get unfulfilled. I get empty.
sure. Well, you see, we always have to do this. We have to decide whether we are willing to accept a person as they are and quit bitching about them, or get away from them, because you're not going to change them. You have to look to see what your expectations are, and if your expectations are being constantly frustrated, then that's your problem. Your expectations are killing you. And sooner or later we all have to come to realize that the other people in our lives are not about to change because we want them to. Some may change and some may not. But you can't count on it, and you can't force it, and you can't make them change. So if you're going to stick with this person, you better figure out that you're going to accept the way she is and quit complaining about it. Just live with it, or get away. Because otherwise,
Spiritual to jettison these sick people around us?
pardon me?
Is it unspiritual, or ungodly, or unsober action? See, because I'm used to being in these victim roles, to get rid of these people in your life.
I don't know about you, son, but I would.
It's not an unspiritual thing.
I'm not about to live with that kind of crap in my life. It's been too many years of doing it, and I learned better. They don't change, and there's no reason to expect them to change, and it's none of my business whether they change or not. The only business of mine is, am I willing to accept it and live with it? And if I'm not, then I got to get away from it. What's the good of walking around like you are right now, all disturbed and upset, and carrying all this this turmoil in your life? Why would you want to throw any one of your precious days down the toilet because of that? I can't understand that a bit. Yeah.
Hi everybody, I'm an alcoholic. But on the same vein of that, Jim, I mean, there is a level of responsibility with each of the individuals that we come in contact every day on the planet, right? I mean, you and I have, is it unsafe to assume that nobody in this planet has got any kind of responsibility? If I say to you, you're my mechanic and you fix my car, and then you decide that you're taking the day off that day, and I come in and say, I'm not talking about, maybe it is righteous indignation, I don't know, but you and I got to balance that as alcoholics, because my tendency was probably not that you can't, you can expect that, but it's the way I dealt with it, you know what I mean? Like, I could go off on a guy that didn't repair my suitcase, because I did, I had this experience just about 2 days ago, and it's not enough to rack my sobriety, but this is why I'm in this building on a Sunday in the middle of the afternoon, is to try to get a better, grasp on the way I was living life wrong in the first place. So I guess my question follows his question is where we take responsibility for our own behavior, but there still is a level of, you and I both know that we can't go on there's faith every day that somebody else is gonna grab the reins and do what they're supposed to do. Right?
Well, sure, but
where do you draw that line and say, okay, that's it, I'm done?
well, I can only tell you where I draw the line, and I can tell you it works for me. If I have your commitment that you're going to do a certain thing, repair my car, repair my luggage,
Yeah.
I have a right to expect you to do that.
Okay.
But it is, you see, the problem he's talking about, these are unarticulated demands and expectations. And this is where we get all bollocksed up, because we carry all these demands and expectations around our head. We've never gotten a commitment. Well, but everybody, all our bright-eyed friends saying, well, of course he should, and of course he shouldn't. Well, so what? There's been no commitment there. If there's a commitment, when you have a commitment with me, I expect you to live up to it. And I have no problem reminding you that you made a commitment. But most of the time our expectations are not articulated. They are not reduced to a commitment of any kind. We carry them around as if they have been, because we somehow or another have come to the conclusion that people are supposed to do what we want them to do. And then if they don't, we're all frustrated and pissed off.
Yes, I was, as a matter of fact.
That's the way I look at it anyway.
But I'm the guy with the money paying him too, so I was trying to articulate it as best I could, but I was getting mad and angry, and then I was talking to my sponsor about it. He's like going, look, you don't want to fight anybody or anything. It's like, I'm not fighting them, I'm just...
You just don't pay them.
Well, I got to get my bag back.
Well, go take your bag back then.
Yeah, I got to use a bag. That's what I did.
Yes, dear.
I think you know when you're in a significant relationship, when you've tried everything possible
I think so too.
and you failed, and you're in utterly despair, and you've reached the end.
I can't imagine even allowing myself to get to the point of utter despair. Why in the world would we do
That's
that?
when you're a hopeless drunk, and you have to be a hopeless drunk in everything.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, that's true. That's the way we used to do it. We don't do that anymore.
Right. Well,
You got to remember something, guys. Let me point this out to you. It is a spiritual principle that we are not to hurt another person.
Right.
But it's also a spiritual principle we're not to allow other people to hurt us. You know why? Because when we're being hurt, we're getting blocked off from God.
right.
And that is absolutely wrong. We are not to permit that. We are to say, stop right there. We'll have none of this. If it doesn't stop, we're out of there. Don't let other people hurt you. You have a responsibility to keep yourself in close contact with God. Anything that's going to block you from God, you get rid of it. It's pretty simple that way, isn't it? We don't have to worry too much about the niceties of this stuff.
Right.
When other people are attacking you, there's nothing damn well nice about it to begin with. We're just not going to permit it. Stop right there. And mean it. Yes. You've had your hand up before. And then I started talking. And then you pulled your hand down.
Yeah, you had something.
I think I was just flopping my arms.
You were flopping your arms. Semaphore. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Roy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Roy.
I'll just share my own personal experience. I was married for 28 years till I got divorced 3 years, almost 4 years ago now. And my ex-wife is also an alcoholic. And we try every way, shape, or form, counseling, separations, fighting, not fighting. We couldn't stay sober living under, one roof. It just wouldn't happen. And finally, after trying everything, we both, actually I started it. I said I can't take it anymore, and I move out, and we filed for divorce proceedings and went through with it. We had two starts over the years before that, but called it off. But finally, it just wasn't working out, and she wasn't gonna change, and I'm sure, you know, I was probably 50% of the fault. I had my thing, and we both were having slips, you know, with drinking in and out of the program, and we just had to go our separate ways, and we still talk to each other. But now, like somebody said, they get a knot every time they're around that person, and every time I talk to her, I still get that knot. This time, I can hang up the phone. You know, I could say, look, I'll talk to you tomorrow, bye. You know, if she starts yelling or cursing.
I love that phrase. I love that phrase that you came out with. Probably 50 cents.
Yeah.
50%.
I'm not perfect.
Are you thinking more, man? You think it's
Oh man, once a boozer, always a boozer. You know, we just don't drink anymore. Anybody want to pick up a chip today? Anybody got any announcements for the good of AA? Anybody have an irresistible impulse, otherwise known as a burning desire? Hearing nothing, Your Honor, we'll now close the court for the day. Get to hold your hand at least once a week. Huh? Sure. Glad you're here. Enjoy our little shindig. Let this circle represent the unity of our fellowship. A moment of silence for those who are still suffering, and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. Thank you. Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven,